I have dabbled in such a breadth of information over the years. Between the age of 29 and now, I've studied psychology, I've studied sociology, I've gone into theology, coaching, the various applied psychology disciplines, cognitive psychology, cognitive behavioural therapy, neuro-linguistic programming, therapeutic counselling. I'm actually a trained counsellor as well, mentoring. The reason why I say all that is because I just needed to understand the human mind for me. I also needed to understand my own mind. I needed to understand how it is that I can best influence human behaviour, because this was the path that I committed my life to going down. There was a gentleman called Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers, back in the 1940s, pioneered person-centred counselling. Right? This was a humanistic psychology. This was back in the days when guys like Sigmund Freud, I don't know if you know your psychology or not, I'm certainly not going to make this a heavy psychology training, but just to give you a little bit of context. Sigmund Freud was referred to as the founding father of psychodynamic psychotherapy or psychology. His main ideology back then was if you want to understand a person, you'll look at their past. All right, and this is, you'll look at the relationship they have with their parents, you'll look at their past experiences, and you talk these things through. And if you talk these things through for long enough, you understand why a person feels the way that they do, why people are sometimes neurotic. Right? The basic assumption here is that people need to be understood and fixed. So in the 1940s, Sigmund Freud, he operated back in the era of the First World War in the 1910s and 20s. So as psychology evolved, Carl Rogers came with a very different perspective. He was more of the mindset that people don't need to be analysed and interpreted. They kind of just need a nurturing, encouraging relationship. Now, life coaching didn't really come about until probably the mid-1970s. Really started taking off probably in the late 80s, 90s. But the need for coaching spawned out of person-centred, which began with counselling. There was a talking therapy. Now, Carl Rogers back then, he proposed that in order for one professional to positively influence another, there needs to be some certain relationship conditions in place, i.e. the person who is influencing needs to be real, needs to be genuine, needs to be empathic, needs to be really congruent, needs to be integral, right? Those sorts of things. But what he also said was that there's kind of a vision that we can all have for our lives, we can all accept for our lives. And this is to be fully functioning. Now it's a funny abstract term. Have you ever thought about what it might mean to become a fully functioning person? Well, think about how many people in the world would define themselves as not being fully functioning. How many people in the world today would define themselves as being broken, or minus something, or mentally unwell, or something like that? I mean, the number of mental health disorder terminologies are increasing year by year by year. All right, so the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Health Disorders has categorised over the last maybe 30 or 40 years hundreds of different ways that people can be functioning unfully. Carl Rogers, for the first time, proposed what it would look like to be fully functioning. Open to experience was the first of these attributes. Simply people who grow to a point of maturity in life where they're okay with life's ups and downs, they're okay with challenges, because challenges and hardships and obstacles are just a part of life. Right? Learn to persevere in the face of delay and all that sort of thing. And they don't need that there are circumstances or conditions to be better or worse. Open to experience. Right? Could you imagine what your life would become like if you were just fully open to experience? All right? People could speak to you however they choose to speak to you. Some people might speak to you really respectfully. Some people might speak to you really disrespectfully, but either way is okay, because you're untouchable. You're just open to experience. How people interact with you kind of shows you the kind of people that you want to build into your life and the kind of people you want to distance yourself from. Open to experience. How many people do you know will spend their years trying to get away from the things that they don't want? Right? Some people will say, I just want to feel happy, I feel sad, I feel depressed, and spend so many years of their life trying to feel happy, rather than ask the one fundamental question, well, what is it about the way in which I'm living my life that makes me dissatisfied or unhappy? Because when we can reach that stage of development in our thinking, we become ready to set goals. If there is something about the way in which I'm living my life that makes me unhappy, well, what do I want instead? Because this now gives me a positive goal, a mission, a vision for something good. So people being open to experience. There is no such thing as good or bad. There's no such thing as right or wrong. There's no such thing as, there's just various levels of different. Carl Rogers proposed that fully functioning people will also be able to live existentially, right? Which kind of builds upon being open to experience. You've got to be open to experience if you want to even hope to experience inner peace in life. Because if you need your life to be as you think it needs to be, then look forward to many, many years of emotional turmoil, stress, and possibly even despair. There are many people who go through life trying to control their life's outcomes rather than just experience them and respond to them as they come and go. Living existentially involves, it's like people who live their lives in the present, opposed to being stuck in the past or obsessed with the future. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? Think about someone that you might know who would claim to be sad or depressed or something like that. You probably know someone, or you've known someone throughout your life to date. Why do people feel sad? People feel sad, very practically, when they don't have what they want, or when they don't know how to get what they want, or when they don't even know what they want. All right, people are just dissatisfied with their current circumstances. All right, many people go through life stuck in the past, and this is where many talking therapies and forms of alternative therapy transfix their focus on the past, which is that psychodynamic approach that I mentioned, pioneered by Sigmund Freud. Now, don't get me wrong, that was innovative back in the day, back in the 1910s, but now that we're in the 2020s, we've got to understand that psychology and our understanding of human behaviour has evolved by 110 years, right? People don't need to analyse their past to make sense of their present or their future, right? Life only gets to be lived once, all right? We just get to experience the whole thing. The past doesn't exist, it's gone. All we ever have is right now. Right? Tomorrow doesn't exist, it may never come. All we have is right now. And it's good for you to understand this as a potential life coach. Because some people who come to you, some of your coaches, might be absolutely obsessed with some grandiose vision or set of goals that they've defined for themselves and for their lives, and really need for these outcomes to happen. And until these outcomes happen, they perceive themselves as being incapable of experiencing any degree of peace or rest today. And that's a very, very stressful, very intense way of living life. Now, it's good to pursue goals, and it's good to learn from the past. So it's good to draw from the past and take lessons, and it's good to have goals and objectives, but it's even better to remain grounded in the present, because it's right here, right now, where we have to make decisions. It's right here, right now, where we get to be consistent or inconsistent. It's right here, right now, where we get to be responsible or irresponsible, where we can be mature, where we can be integral. Some people who are more future-orientated and future-focused in past might sometimes compromise their integrity or become inconsistent in their ways in order to progress towards a given goal or outcome. Right, now, listen, we live in a world where integrity is an important thing for many people, right? But it's useful for us to understand this so we can sometimes give people a choice. Is integrity important for you? Is progress important for you? Is progress more important than integrity? What we're talking here is about values. So living existentially, yeah, it's good learning from the past and it's good focusing on the future. But it's even better to remain completely grounded in the present, because this is where we have to make all of our decisions, right here, right now. Self-awareness. Fully functioning people are aware of the relationship between the health of their attitude, their outlook, their beliefs, their behaviours, and the quality of their everyday experience. Right? Self-awareness. I could probably be quite bold in saying now in the 2020s, I would go as far as saying the human race isn't moving forward in intelligence. The human race is kind of moving backwards. We live in an era where social media platforms have made it very, very easy for radical, extreme, and very, very unhealthy ideologies to go mainstream fast. We are losing our emerging younger generations to ridiculous ideologies. We're losing them. We are seeing some of our young people making extreme modifications to their own physical bodies because of ideologies that they buy into, they subscribe to. Some of these ideologies that are even getting taught mainstream regarding identity, for example. Self-awareness involves us not just being aware of what we believe or having an opinion on life or an outlook. It also involves us evaluating the health and the wisdom of our outlook or our beliefs. So we might believe some stuff to be true, but how do we know that our beliefs are true? If I define myself in a certain way, is this wise? Is this wholesome? Is defining myself and acting and conducting myself in a certain way going to take my life in the direction that I want? Or is it going to take me in a direction that might cause me some huge regrets later on in life? But bear in mind, as I've mentioned, as a coach, you're not here to tell people what to do. You're not here to correct people or advise, and we'll look at this in the next clip, what a coach is and what a coach isn't. Your goal is to simply hold up a mirror and ask the question, are you making a wise decision here? What would the wisest decision be? What's the most reckless decision you could make? What action steps could you take that will get you closer towards what you want? So we become more of a questioning mirror holder, if you like. Self-awareness. Our goal is to nurture fully functioning people. If we are not aware of ourselves, then we cannot ask the kind of questions that will enable people to evaluate themselves objectively, which is where self-awareness comes from, through objective self-evaluation. People who are driven by progression, responsibility, and growth are people who can make uncomfortable decisions today that will enable them to achieve meaningful end goals tomorrow. Not driven by short-lived gratification. Think about how many people you know today who are motivated by being happy. We live in a world that still, even in the 2020s, pursues happiness, the pursuit of happiness. It's the American dream. You'll see this all over social media. I just want to be happy. Here are my 5 steps to living a happy life. Think about what happiness is. Happiness comes about when we find strategies to get what we want, right? If we get what we want, we're happy. But what happens if we don't get what we want? When we don't get what we want, we get angry or anxious or sad. All right, so we get what we want, we feel happy. We don't get what we want, we feel anxious or sad or something else. But what happens when we make progress? Because it's one thing getting what we want, but getting what we want isn't always the same as moving our lives forward and progressing. All right, for example, you can take this course and you can become accredited and you can get a certificate and all that kind of thing, and it's great. So you can leave this course with a certificate, or you can leave this course having evolved in your thinking, having become a more responsible, more aware, more alert human being. All right, the choice is yours. What are your priorities? What do you want? What's important to you? Right? All I'm really doing is kind of coaching you at this stage. I'm teaching you a little bit, but I'm coaching you through the process, through this dialogue that we're having. All right, I'm hoping that I'm provoking you to think. All right, I want you to use your mind. Remember, teachers' job and responsibility is to teach. Students' responsibility is to learn. You will learn not by remembering the information that I throw your way, but by reflecting on the ideas, all right, and seeing how they relate to you. For this is how you will most effectively also coach other people. Creative expression, right? A fully functioning person is someone who has no problem expressing themselves creatively, not expressing themselves sexually, not expressing themselves extremely, expressing themselves creatively. Right? It's probably fair to say that I have broken all the rules when it comes to delivering life coach training, all right? Because I do so in a bit of an unconventional way. I break all the rules. I am not willing to subscribe to the notion that there is any authority in the world who has the ultimate methodology for living life in an effective way. I do not subscribe to the notion that there are any gurus, that no one has all the answers. Right? No one does. Which means that the way in which I teach life coaching is just my way of teaching life coaching. Right? In the same way there will be other people out there teaching life coaching in their ways. It doesn't make their way worse than mine, and doesn't make my way worse than theirs. It means that I'm just expressing myself creatively. Creative expression, people who live life to the full, who create innovative things, who make a difference, who solve problems, who embrace challenges and can endure suffering with gladness. Endure suffering with gladness. Do you know how personal growth comes? Personal growth doesn't come about through just feeling happy with our current circumstances, through having a mollycoddled, easy life. Personal growth happens when we have and when we are given the opportunity to persevere through challenge and hardship and delay. Personal growth happens when we figure out a strategy for getting ourselves out of the hole that we find ourselves in sometimes. Personal growth doesn't happen when people give us a handout. Personal growth doesn't happen when we have mum and dad come along and do our washing or our laundry or cleaning our house for us and doing all our cooking. Personal growth happens the more responsibility that we take for ourselves. Thus, I impress upon you right now that the greatest service that you can do to your coachees is forever encourage them in these 5 areas. To be open to experience, not to like or dislike, right? And to be present in the current moment. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today, right now, is a gift. It's a gift that most people never unpack because they're too busy transfixed in the past or the future. Self-awareness. If you can help a person grow in a degree of awareness, you might just save a person's life. Seriously. People who are driven by progression, responsibility and growth. As a coach, you cannot work with anyone who's not driven by progression, responsibility and growth. It's kind of the starting point. If a person doesn't want to change their life, doesn't want to move forward, you can't coach them. You can't coach someone towards going round in circles. You can't coach someone towards feeling happier or feeling better. I've come across many people over the years, and we're talking about the coaching industry here. Honestly, it saddens me to say, but it's not always an integral industry. I know people out there who build really impressive websites and say, I will coach you to happiness. I will coach you through trauma. That's like saying, I will coach you through an emotion. So the greatest goal that a person might have in their life is an emotion. That's not a goal. That's not an internal matter. That's like, it's not possible to make another person feel anything. The only thing that will help a person feel better about their circumstances in life is when they can see that they're progressing towards something greater that they want, i.e. an ideal state that's greater than their current state of affairs. You with me? Make sense? So, our goal here is to nurture fully functioning people. But listen, if you are not functioning in these areas, if you are not aware of yourself, if you're not living existentially, if you're immersed in the past, then if you're not open to experience, all of this will work its way through your coaching, all right? Which means that the degree of influence that you'll have over people's lives will be minimal, all right? So it's important that if you are to help other people to grow and develop and improve themselves and to progress, you yourself have got to be going there first. This is what it means to live a life by example.